The facts are the facts, the texts are the texts, and I think that the evidence will be clear.
That Ventura had a choice and that she chose to participate in those sexual encounters.
Where she is entertaining other people in the bedroom. He enjoyed having the freak-offs.
She's being asked specifically about the drug use.
She is clearly excited about.
Did you see what just happened in the Diddy trial? The music mogul completely lost control in the courtroom when prosecutors revealed text messages between him and his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. These weren't just any messages they contained. Evidence that directly contradicted statements Diddy has been making for months. The judge had to call for order as Diddy's legal team scrambled to contain the damage. And that was just the beginning of day 4.
For a fourth day in the federal criminal trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The defense continuing cross-examination this morning, confronting her with dozens of her own messages, many explicit, hoping to convince the jury she was an eager sexual partner who matched Combs's desires. I'm always ready to freak off, one message said.
She was into the freak-offs herself and was like a willing participant and was into all the freaky stuff, and essentially that was the crux of what they were trying to do yesterday.
And do you think they proved that or not?
I mean, there's texts like that from 2009. I'm always ready to freak off. There was some other texts where she was referencing like hitting him up about the FOs, is what they were referring to him. To me, like, yes, this doesn't look good, but at the same time, I think the timeline is crucial here. And these are texts from 2009, man. That was when they were first getting in the relationship. She was young. Obviously, they were in the honeymoon stage, and she was stoked to like, oh my God, I'm with Diddy. I'm living this lavish lifestyle. Of course, she's going to be saying things that she...
4 of the Diddy trial started like any other day. The courtroom was quiet, just the normal hushed whispers and occasional shuffling of papers. Diddy sat at the defense table looking calm and collected in his tailored suit, occasionally leaning over to whisper to his attorneys. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The judge was working through procedural matters, and most people in the room were just settling in for another day of technical legal arguments. Then everything changed in an instant. The prosecutor stood up and announced they had evidence they wanted to present to the court. Nobody thought much of it at first until they mentioned text messages between Diddy and Cassie that hadn't been previously disclosed. The entire room shifted forward in their seats. You could actually feel the energy in the courtroom transform as the prosecutor approached with a folder containing printouts. Diddy's reaction was immediate and visceral. His eyes widened, and according to one courtroom reporter, the color drained. From his face instantly, his breathing visibly changed. Short, quick breaths that had his shoulders rising and falling rapidly. His hands, which had been calmly resting on the table, suddenly gripped the edge so tightly his knuckles turned white. "I've covered celebrity trials for 15 years, said one veteran courtroom journalist, and I've never seen someone lose their composure so completely. He's always been the definition of cool and collected in public." As the prosecutor began to explain the content of the text, Diddy suddenly shoved back his chair and stood up. His lawyer grabbed his arm, but Diddy shook it off and took 2 steps toward the judge's bench. That's when things got really chaotic. 2 of his attorneys immediately jumped, up one of them physically placing himself between Diddy and the bench. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly calling for order. Court officers moved toward the defense table. Diddy was saying something under his breath that people in the first row could hear, but couldn't make out clearly. A witness in the gallery described it as angry, muttering that got louder with each word. His lead attorney had to physically guide him back to his seat, hand firmly on his shoulder, whispering intensely in his ear. The judge called for a 15-minute recess, but the damage was done. Reporters were already frantically typing on their phones. The normally unflappable music mogul had just lost control in front of everyone. What made this outburst so shocking wasn't just that it happened. It was the timing. The text hadn't even been read aloud yet. Just the mention of their existence was enough to trigger this response. Whatever was in those messages clearly hit a nerve. When court resumed, Diddy's attorney requested a sidebar with the judge, which lasted nearly 10 minutes. Diddy sat rigid in his chair, jaw clenched, not making eye contact with anyone. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife, and then the prosecution started displaying the first of the text messages on the courtroom screen. That's when everyone understood why Diddy had reacted so strongly. The private conversations between him and Cassie were about to expose a side of their relationship that contradicted everything he'd been claiming for months.
Doing great. I said she was ready, and I think she's demonstrating that. The facts are the facts, the texts are the texts, and I think that the evidence will be clear as the case goes on and Cassie's testimony goes on, and we'll see what the jury does.
And finally, we'll talk about Justin Bieber because he is finally addressing the Diddy stuff. There's been long speculation that somehow he's involved.
Surprised it took so long to address.
Well, he's clearing that up now. And also we'll talk about how people are scared for Justin Bieber because they think he's in a cult. They have to have it.
By the end of today, Cassie will be done. So they have all day today to ask her whatever they want to ask her.
Because obviously she's about to pop. And that's like...
Which is totally understandable.
So if she did pop, if she did give birth, let's say the technical term, over the weekend, you know what would happen then, Devin?
I don't.
Mistrial, baby.
Why do you say that? What?
Because she's due back on the stand to give testimony. And if she can't give testimony anymore...
No, she's giving testimony today.
I know. I was saying, what if...
Oh, like she gave birth and then
that's why. That's the
delayed.
reason. If she wasn't pregnant, I don't think the judge would have said you have to finish by today.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Obviously, that's the whole.
Okay.
That's the whole crux of the argument.
Obviously,
yeah.
You didn't explicitly, spell it out.
But Diddy's team is also pissed off because they're like, we want as much time as we can have.
Her voice is low at times. The defense did tell her if it's too much, I can read them. But there were many times early on this morning where she read some of those explicit details where she is clearly excited about a freak off and talks about entertaining other people in the bedroom.
And what has Diddy's demeanor been in this cross-examination as well?
There was a moment where Sean Combs was nodding in agreement when they brought up a message that he sent her where he said, one of my favorite times of the freak-offs is when we're able to make love after. And then she responds, that's the same for me. Now, what's interesting here is that does match what she told prosecutors or what she's been telling the jury all along, which is she did this and she said, but she really wanted to spend time with him after the fact. So he was shaking his head at this message where he's almost, I guess, agreeing that he did say, without him saying it, he enjoyed having the freak-offs and then having sex with her after the fact. And her saying,
The prosecution knew exactly what they were doing by waiting until day 4 to reveal these texts. They built their case methodically establishing a foundation with witnesses and evidence before dropping this bomb. The timing wasn't random. They wanted the jury to first understand the context of Diddy and Cassie's relationship before seeing the raw, unfiltered communication between them. The texts spanned a 3-year period from 2016 to 2019, and prosecutors displayed them in chronological order. The earliest messages seemed innocent enough, but as they progressed through 2017, the tone drastically changed. What really shocked everyone was a series of late-night texts from July 2018 sent just hours after, a public event where the couple appeared happy and in love. You think you can just walk away? Nobody walks away from me. I made you. I can break you just as fast. Read one message from Diddy's phone. The timestamp showed 2:43 And right after they'd returned from a high-profile awards show, Cassie's response came minutes later. Please stop threatening me. I'm scared of what you'll do. His reply was immediate. You should be. The courtroom actually gasped when that exchange appeared on screen. One juror visibly recoiled. The prosecution highlighted this exchange, specifically noting that Diddy's public image as a loving partner completely contradicted these private threats. Another series of texts from March 2019 showed increasingly controlling behavior. Who were you talking to at the party? I saw you smiling at him, Diddy wrote. When Cassie explained it was just a photographer she knew professionally, he responded, Don't lie to me, I have people watching you everywhere. There's nowhere you can go that I won't know about. What really seemed to strike the jury was how the messages aligned perfectly with events in their public timeline. Just 2 days after a widely publicized interview where Diddy called Cassie the love of my life, he sent her a text reading, This arrangement works because you do what I say, don't forget that. The prosecution methodically connected each set of messages to specific incidents mentioned in Cassie's testimony. They pointed out patterns in the language, how threats were often followed by apologies, then gifts, then more controlling behavior. They highlighted Diddy's repeated use of phrases like, "You belong to me and nobody will believe you." Perhaps most damaging was a text from September 2018 where Diddy wrote, "I'm sorry about last night, I lost control, it won't happen again." This message came the day after an incident Cassie had previously described in her testimony where she alleged he physically assaulted her. The final text revealed showed Diddy attempting to prevent Cassie from speaking out after their breakup. "Remember our agreement. Your silence has been paid for. Break it, and there will be consequences." This message was sent just weeks before he publicly described their split as amicable and filled with mutual respect. These private words painted a picture completely at odds with Diddy's public statements about respecting women and maintaining positive relationships with his exes. As the last text faded from the screen, the contrast between Diddy's carefully crafted public image and these raw, unfiltered messages couldn't have been more stark. His own words had undermined everything he'd been claiming for months.
And she was with Michael B. Jordan and was with Kid Cudi for a minute. But during that time period, she was still having freak-offs with Diddy. And I think that was them trying to show this wasn't a controlling thing. Here she was hooking up with other people. She just was into the freak-offs.
I kind of buy that, to be honest.
So
she is out of the freak-off scene. She is when she's with Kid Cudi or allegedly with Michael B. Jordan. She's kind of out of the freak-offs if she wants to be. So why do you keep going back? Yeah. I know it's kind of like a mental, she still loves Diddy. Diddy was jealous about her.
Oh, yeah, because that was another thing that the prosecutors were trying to do is show that, that they had a very jealous relationship. She would get jealous when he's with Kid Cudi. Also, Kim Porter, Cassie would be jealous of Kim Porter.
Right.
Trying to show that, Cassie, you were in love with this guy. That's why you were jealous.
Right.
So, this was a real relationship.
It was just interesting to see Chris Brown.
I mean, he's always coming up somewhere, dude.
He is.
Chris Brown.
All right. Final story of the week. Justin Bieber is not a victim of Diddy. So this was one of those rumors or whatever that was flying around in the months leading up to the trial. And to be honest, there was quite a few rumors flying around. Was there minors involved? Says if no other celebrity was part of freak-offs, why are they in hiding? Are they in hiding though?
I don't think they're in hiding. I just think other celebrities didn't want to insert themselves. No one wants to be tied to Diddy one way or the other.
Even if you're at a white party, just having a lot of fun, one of Diddy's white parties, you don't want to be linked in any way.
No, and that's why all those people, there's a few people I think that have come forward and been I didn't see any of this freak.
Ever since Cassie filed her lawsuit, Diddy has been telling the same story over and over. He's denied every allegation, painted their relationship as loving, and portrayed their breakup as mutual and respectful. But these text messages just blew his entire narrative apart. Just 3 months ago, Diddy sat down for that big interview with Entertainment Tonight, where he looked directly into the camera and said, "I would never raise my hand to a woman. That's not how I was raised." He even got emotional talking about how much he still respected Cassie as an important part of my journey. Remember when he posted that long statement on Instagram calling her allegations completely false and a desperate attempt for financial gain? Then there was that press conference his team held where his spokesperson claimed that Mr. Combs and Ms. Ventura maintained a healthy, respectful relationship both personally and professionally. They even had the nerve to release those old photos of happy moments between them, suggesting Cassie was making everything up. But the text messages told a completely different story. While Diddy was telling the world they had a respectful partnership, he was privately texting her threats. While he publicly claimed to wish her nothing but the best, his messages were controlling her every move. The contradiction couldn't be more obvious. The prosecution really hammered this point home. They created a devastating timeline on a large display, board placing Diddy's public statements on one side and his private texts on the other. Sometimes sent on the exact same day, one column showed his interview claiming mutual respect, while the other showed him texting her. Nobody will believe you. Anyway, legal experts watching the trial were stunned by this strategy. This kind of direct contradiction decimates credibility, said one trial analyst outside the courthouse. It's not just that the texts are damaging, It's that they reveal an entirely different person than the one he's presented to the public. The contradiction that seemed to trigger Did's outburst most strongly involved his repeated public denials of ever being physically aggressive. In a statement from January, he claimed, "I have never engaged in any form of physical abuse toward anyone," yet one of his texts clearly referenced what happened last night and apologized for losing control. Sent the morning after an incident, Cassie had testified about his public claim that their breakup was a mutual decision made with care and respect, looked especially hollow next to texts showing him threatening consequences if she spoke out. His carefully crafted image as a respectful exartner completely fell apart in the face of messages where he reminded her that her silence had been paid for. Perhaps most damaging was how these texts contradicted his statement that he always supported Cassie's career and independence. The private messages revealed constant monitoring, questioning who she spoke with, and reminders that he made her and could break her just as easily. Throughout these revelations, Cassie sat in the courtroom, her eyes fixed straight ahead. She never looked at Diddy, not even when his outburst disrupted the proceedings, as each contradiction between his public statements and private messages